we're going to take this beautiful cherry and we're going to build a 36-inch coffee table. Then we're going to cut lots of holes in it. We're going to use some epoxy, and for inspiration, crop circles. What we're looking for is a random pattern in the tabletop. We want different holes, different sizes. We're going to cut all the way through. And then we're going to fill it with black epoxy. And you're probably thinking, are we always successful with our epoxy pours? That's a negative. But are we afraid? No. It's much, much more interesting to me to build something different each time, to kind of stretch yourself and become more creative. I guess that I'm not really concerned with making a traditional piece, but I want to make an unusual piece. And to make it authentic and one of a kind, it's time to turn some legs for it. And first, we're going to mill up some blanks, 3.5 by 3.5. We're going to cut off the corners. And when we take it to the lathe, we're going to make these chunkier legs. They're going to be tapered, but they're going to go from about 3.25 to 1 7/8. And it's going to give it a very, very stout look. And this is much more proportional to this large table. And 1, 2, 3, they're done. We've got the 3 legs positioned equally around the table. And the 3-leg table never wobbles. It never tips. It always self-levels. By placing some radiuses out at the 120, 240, and 360 marks around the table, we can avoid putting a hole in the wrong place. And I have to be honest, most people would really not want to drill these holes in the tabletop, but I was pretty jacked, and I actually got so excited that I forgot to film it, besides this. But there are a lot of holes, a lot of different sizes, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. And no, it does not look like a cookie. It's a crop circle. And looking at all these holes, I've decided that I'm too lazy to sand them. So I'm taking this router with this 12.5-degree paper, cleaning them up, and it's getting closer and closer to epoxy pouring time. And as it gets very close to epoxy pouring time, I need to do a little prep. I'm going to coat the entire piece, top, bottom, inside the holes, with kind of a seal epoxy coat. And that should help with adhesion. And hopefully it will keep the black epoxy that I want to use out of the cherry. And this caulking sequence here is almost magical. It's mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. You're welcome to go back and watch it over and over. As we mix the epoxy, we're almost at a fever pitch. It gets pretty much out of control, off the chain. But thank goodness, Jordan is very precise, and he's filling up each cavity very neatly, and very pleased. And now you see I have taken over the pouring, and it is a delicious hot mess. But somehow there was a small leak that turned into a moderate leak and then progressed to a massive, unbelievable, terrible leak. Look at this. Unbelievable. And eventually we did fix it. And we had to change our sign. That was a personal best at 10 days. And now we have to start over. So we let it sit about 5 days. licked our wounds. We're popping it off and fixing to start machining it. I figure most of my epoxy is probably going to get ground off here, but it seems to be the way of it. So we set up our router sled, get ready to level it, and we're going to start on the back. And I have to be truthful when I tell you that there's nothing fun about this at all. It's like a blizzard of epoxy chips. It's like a sandstorm. I mean, I'd rather pressure wash the house than do this. Other things I'd rather do than this. A physical exam at the doctor's office, stepping in a hole in the yard, slipping on ice, all of these things better than this. And to me, I love the way it looks before I machine it. Maybe I should just stop and admire it for a little while. But I didn't. And yes, it is just as bad on the top as it was on the bottom. It's beaten me to death, and I can't wait now to start sanding. The top sanded to 120. We got to do a little work on these epoxy chips. Something that's pretty common. It's not a big deal. We're going to take some black CA glue, use some accelerator, sand them down. It might take a couple times, but we'll do it now at 120 so we can really get it nice and smooth through the sanding process. We're going to take that same chamfer bit, and from the bottom side, we're going to put a 12.5-degree chamfer. There's a lot of sanding to do. We're going to take everything up to 220. After we get everything to 220, we're going to go ahead and put a round over on the top and probably hand sand it just a little bit. Try to knock down any lines. I'm very pleased with the profile, and now it's time to make some brackets for the legs. A lot of times people just buy some metal brackets and put them on here. Sometimes some metal legs, that's fine, but I always like to do a little something different. There's always these little pieces of wood left after you get through gluing something up. And I'm going to make them so that they're round and they have like maybe a 12, 13-degree taper. And this will give the tabletop a really nice aggressive posture that I like. Because of the cut that I need to make on these pieces, I'm working up a kind of jig to hold it in place so that I can stay as far away from it and it can be as safe as possible. There's probably a different way to do this, but I've done this many times. I feel good. You do what you feel like, but be careful no matter what you do. Continuing this theme of circles on the table, it's not really that a lot of people are going to see it, but I kind of get a kick out of thinking that somebody, when they put the legs on, they screw them on, we're going to look and think, wow, somebody did something really different here. Somebody thought about it. Or maybe not. You can see here the way the table leg will fit on that taper. I just really like the way it looks having the wooden brackets under there. But I'm going to cut it into about an 8-inch circle. And what we'll do first is we'll cut real close to the line on the bandsaw, and then we're going to put on our template, and we're going to take a very big pattern bit. But because this is round and it's kind of hard to control, we're going to put a handle on it, and we're going to be very careful, and we're just cutting up the smallest amount. At this point in time, it's starting to really look like something. I'm getting ready to put my legs on. I'm marking the centers. I'm going to put a big insert in there. And I try to put a long enough insert that it goes through that wooden plate into the bottom of the tabletop and kind of acts as another fastener, joining the two together. It's finally time to put the finish on. We're going to put on some Osmo. First, we're going to do the bottom. And I always like to do the bottom first because I usually like to flip it over and work the top for the last time. I don't want to ever set it on the top again after I do that bottom. So we're just going to squeegee it. We'll scrub it in the white pad. And then we're going to buff it off. And we're probably going to do it 2, maybe 3 times. Thanks for watching.